share my screen. I think some of you are already in the pair deck, and I see 4 students already logged in. So thank you. And our first 2 webinars, I'll just show you here. I hope you can see my screen now. Let me just put in the chat the link to the pair deck
Yes
for the
po.
ones who just came in. Thank you. Let me just share the link again to pair deck for everyone. There you go for Miss Jean Ia, who just came in. All right. So I'm the first in the many series of Kaisipan's webinar workshop series on best practices in designing an equitable curriculum. I think this is very important in the Philippine setting because in the Philippines, this issue of using technology in teaching and learning is not as equitable as it would be in first world countries. In fact, even in the US, they still struggle with this issue of equity because there are still groups, minorities who do not have access to technology. So I think this is a world phenomenon. No? And the first of the series will be mine, which is the 2020 Educator from Assigners to Designers. And next week, we have Miss Nina Estudillo. She's also here with us. And she will be teaching you something very important with regard to teaching in a pandemic situation, especially in a pandemic situation. She'll be talking to us about strengthening students' engagement through social emotional learning and project based learning. In fact, I'll be mentioning some of her topics just to show you that our workshop series is really tied together and threaded together. All right, so let's start. So here's my topic for today. Hopefully I'll make sure that we finish by 6. And I hope you don't mind that if I tend to speak fast, maybe because I'm trying to catch on my slides, or if we end early, I have prepared backup slides to keep the ball rolling, no? Because our learning is nonstop. And if there's anything good or about this pandemic and online distance learning is this plethora of webinars that we are able to attend that we could never attend when we were still inside a classroom, right? So let's start. The 2020 Educator. Why did I choose 2020? Because 2020 is, alam naman natin yan, na sobrang daming nangyari ngayong 2020. For the people in Region 4A and in nearby towns like Laguna, I'm from Laguna, when Taal exploded in January, sorry. And it was horrible. No? We did not have classes for 3 weeks. And then here we have the coronavirus and we're still in lockdown. Students can still not leave the house, well, unless they're 15. And of course, there are other tragic events that happened also within this year. And well, not really a world problem, but well, it was a big deal that we lost Kobe Bryant, right? A lot of tragic events. But anyway, this whole 2020 um, is not just a vision. Lumabo pa ata yung paningin natin ngayon 2020. So from assigners and designer to designers, designing equitable lessons. And I see 5 students already here in my pair deck. The setup of pair deck right now is student based. So you can browse from one slide, move from one slide to another on your own, but try to follow the discussion, the slides. You can move the slide as I also moved my presentation. So for those who just came in, I'm not sure if you could also see the chat history. Miss Tony, if I could just um, seek your help, or Miss Nina to copy paste the link for those who just came in.
Ah,
I'm not
okay.
sure if they could see the chat history when they come in.
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, so that they can just click. So this is how Pear Deck works. I love Pear Deck because it's interactive. It makes your discussion very interactive. So let's go to the slide. This is slide number 2 on your Pear Deck. And I would like you to drag the 2 dots that you see on Pear Deck and drag it onto that Likert scale that you see there. I create written works because it's required from me as a teacher. Where would you place that?
Using the link. Wait, let me check.
Yeah, I still have two students on the who are on the title slide. You can click the arrow at the bottom left. You see an arrow there. And you can drag the dots like this. I'm sorry. I think yeah. You can drag the dots to whatever part. And if you want, since this is student-based, you can also proceed to the next slide. I give out assignments to keep my students busy at home, and I make assessments that are easy to check. Again, you can drag the dots on slide number 3. I think red and green, para Christmas, di ba? Walang tamang sagot dito. So it's okay. Just drag the dot wherever you think yung initial reaction ninyo dun sa statement. Real talk lang dapat tayo dito. Are you already on the third slide? On this one that I'm showing here in my shared screen, the one on giving out assignments to my students to keep them busy. And I make assessments that are
Yes,
easy to check. Ang cute kasi hindi talaga yung iba hindi naglagay dun sa mismong line. Okay, so let me just review yung responses ninyo. I could see your responses here. And dun sa first, let me go back to the first one. This one. I create written works because it's required from me as a teacher. Some of you answered, it's varied wala namang nag-disagree, but there are some who dragged the dot, very near disagree. Merong mga neutral, merong mga agree, merong isang strongly agree required from me as a teacher. Gusto ko yung nag-strongly agree kasi real talk lang tayo, di ba? Kasi require naman talaga tayo na kailangan may written work tayo dun sa mga assessments natin. Kasi kailangan natin ng grades, di ba? Dun sa second statement, I make sure that the assessments are difficult for the students to do. Meron tayong nag-strongly disagree, meron tayong disagree lang, tas merong naglagay dun sa strongly agree. Feeling ko lang, math teacher yung nag-strongly agree dun sa assessment must be difficult for the students to do. Pero yeah, actually, sometimes I also want to make sure that our assessments are also somewhat difficult, but later I'll talk to you about that one. And with regard to the next slide, ito sobrang varied. Walang nag-overlap ng dots. Dun sa first slide, nag-overlap pa yung mga dots ninyo. Pero dito sa, wait, let me move. Dito sa I give out assignments to keep my students busy at home, it's kalat. Naka-spread out siya. May strongly disagree, may strongly agree, agree, disagree, gitna ng disagree at saka neutral. Very varied. And then dun sa second statement on this slide, I make assessments that are easy to check. Again, it's very spread out between disagree and agree. Walang nag-strongly disagree, walang nag-strongly agree. No? Ang I like this group because it's varied. Your responses are varied. Pero may tamang sagot ba dito or maybe maling sagot? Nothing, really. This is This Likert scale, this activity that I try to do now is really just to get a feel of our teaching philosophy. Your teaching philosophy is reflected on how you responded to this Likert scale. Nag-pause ako sandali na kasi I want to give you a few minutes, a few seconds to reflect na parang oo nga no, ano ba yung teaching philosophy ko? Ano yung teaching philosophy na lumabas dito sa pagsagot ko sa Likert scale ng mga statements na ito? Student pasto, you can go back to your response in the two slides. How does this reflect me as a teacher? Am I more of an assigner or a designer? Ano bang pagkakaiba ng dalawa? Diba? So, ito yung mga assigners natin. Yung mga assigners natin, yeah, kailangan tayo magbigay ng homework. Bigay homework. Bigay tayo ng magpapagawa natin sa mga estudyante. Let's give them tasks to do. Ang dami nilang time sa bahay. Let's keep them busy. Administer assessments kasi required ng DepEd yan. Required yan ng principal ko. Hindi ako marerehire pagka hindi ako nagbigay ng written works, di ba? And the assigners are just assigning for the heck of assigning, and there's little thought in what's given in creating the assignments kasi required lang eh, doon lang tayo nagsistay. But am I saying na yung mga nagbibigay ng assignment lang ay fully assigners? No, you're not all fully assigners. All that description that I show here in this column is really the extreme. The extreme. What about the designers? A designer designs homework. May pagkakaiba pala yon. Yung magbigay lang ng homework sa pag-design ng homework. A designer plans the tasks in a meaningful manner. They design assessment. Iba yung verb ng designer sa assigner. And the designer would always consider meaningful intention. The intention is very important when we are creating assessments. So, yun yung assigners versus designers. We could be in the middle of an assigner and designer. Maybe we are already designers in our own right. So, what are the characteristics of a designer? A designer is inspired. They plan a program that is always relevant. And they create lessons and assessments with intention. Pag gumagawa ba tayo ng written works natin, ng performance tasks natin sa school, ano ang intention natin? Yun ba na para lang maging busy sila? Siyempre, it's also good that to know that we need to make their time productive. But is our assessment well crafted? Doable ba to ng online distance learning, o mas-stress lang yung bata, o ma-anxious lang sila, or mag-mental breakdown sila after nung ating assessment? Yan, inspired. I think the keyword here is inspired. Later I will emphasize this inspiration part. So we want to become designers, diba? This is the whole point of my presentation, that from assigners we become more designers. So to become a designer, it entails a lot of processes, and there are several design processes that can be applied in the field of education. I think ang unang-unang design na alam na natin is the understanding by design. Ang tagal na nito, siguro year 2008, nauso na tong understanding by design sa DepEd. At ang alam na natin to, bihasa na tayo sa definition ng UBD, 'di ba? May mga joke pa nga yan eh. Anong ginagawa mo? UBD, UBD. Parang DVD, DVD. Sa school namin, ganun kami. Kamusta na yung UBD, UBD mo dyan? So yung understanding by design, ang concept natin ito, alam natin to, is always keeping the end in mind. Kung ano ba yung gusto nating ma-assess at the end, and then thinking backwards. Backward design si understanding by design. Ngayon, may mga pumapasok na rin na ibang design principles. Human-centered design and the universal design for learning. Are you ready? Because we'll be discussing the second and third bullet point, human-centered design. Let's start our human-centered design. So how do we become designers? And to become designers, we have to be human-centered. What is human-centered design, or HCD? Actually, human-centered design is an ISO standard in design. Design in what? Architecture, when designing technology, when designing furniture, when you're designing also interiors in your house, in your room. Yan ang human-centered design. It's a very general concept of designing. It's also defined as a creative approach to problem solving. This is the human-centered design, ha? And this unleashes one's creativity scientifically. Ayan, pag-asa sa mga taong hindi talaga creative. Ako, hindi talaga ako creative. Pero yung creativity ko, I would like to think that my creativity is drawn from science. Nangungopia lang ako ng ibang creativity ng ibang tao. And then in the process, experiment, experiment. Okay, this works too, this works too. Ganyan. So yan. Yan si human-centered design. Unleashes one's creativity scientifically, and eto ha, human-centered design lang to, general concept ha. They also believe in this one. Putting people's emotions, their experience, and their needs at the center. I think as teachers in this group, nung nabasa nyo tong fourth bullet, nagigets nyo na, dyan papasok yung education. Yung putting people's emotions, experience, and needs at the center. And that is really what human-centered design is all about. Putting the person in the center. Ano ba yan? Yung student-centered? Student-centered, medyo iba yon compared sa human-centered. Yung alam nating student-centered na lagi na lang sinasabi, no, that the teacher is the facilitator, student-centered, lahat ng activities natin, na lahat students lang yung gumagawa. Yun yung student-centered. But human-centered is different. I think we have to start leveling up the way yung terminologies natin. Dapat yung activities natin, hindi lang student-centered, but human-centered. No? Turuan natin kayo. Paano ba natin ile-level up yung student-centered na yan? So how do we become human-centered in our design? First, we need inspiration. Yun nga yung sinabi ko kanina, di ba? The first phase of human-centered design is really inspiration. And you know what? As teachers, I'm sure you agree with me. When we decided to become a teacher, it wasn't, for most of us, it was really an inspiration. Personally, ako, siguro I speak for myself. I was inspired to become a teacher because ang gusto ko talagang maging nung high school ako and going into college ay isang mayaman na CEO. Yun talaga. Kahit yung tatay ko, lagi akong bine-brainwash, so to speak, or trying to mold my mindset and my future, thinking that my direction really is to become a billionaire, to become a successful CEO of a company. And that has been my goal actually ever since, even when I went to college. But I was inspired by my college professors to become a teacher. And I was inspired when I went to an outreach project in Cadiz, Negros Occidental. I went to one of the project was they assigned me to teach and to interview poor families in Cadiz, in a farm, the workers in a farm in Cadiz. And in the process of my talking with them, I realized the importance of education. And sumakay kami sa truck yung sasakyan namin eh. As in truck, like dump truck, container truck, no? Nakasakay kami doon sa truck. And then nung paalis na yung truck, yung mga bata, yung mga anak ng farmers started running after the truck. And they were saying, bye-bye, bye-bye, thank you, bye-bye. And seeing those children showing that kind of gratitude for the service that we gave them in the farm, na talagang lumambot yung puso ko na parang, my goodness, our country really needs to education needs teachers. Really, we need to start teaching, and that was it. No, although I'm not teaching in a farm or the poor children, I'm teaching now. Well, in an elite school, so to speak. But hopefully, these children or students that I have now will be inspired. Will be the ones to help those poor farmers. No, that's how we teach. So that's the first phase, inspiration. And kita nyo na nung pagpasok natin sa education na to, sa field ng teaching na ito, very human-centered na. Even our intention was already human-centered. Pero ano nangyari, di ba? Nag-iiba. Siyempre nakikita natin yung need for economic survival. And then the phase 2 of the human-centered design is ideation. And phase 3 is implementation. Let me discuss this in another graphic. I hope you're following me in the slides in Pear Deck. I hope you're moving also from one slide to another. This one. So the inspiration phase of the human-centered design. Are we inspired? Dito pumapasok yung empathy. Empathy or ability to to feel, no, to put the person's emotions, experience at the center of our design. This empathy. How well do we know our users? Who are our users? Who are our consumers? The students. How well do we know our students? Para makapag-start tayong mag-inspire. Are we inspired to help them? Are we inspired or challenged on our part to make sure that we are teaching them something relevant for the world? And the next phase is ideation. Ideation is, hey, I have an opportunity for design. I have an opportunity to create something, to design. As teachers, ano yung dinedesign natin? Assignments, assessments, lesson plan, even our synchronous class. Paano natin i-design? Paano yung flow nung synchronous class ko? Paano ko siya i-design? Diretsong turo lang ba ako? Or aayusin ko yung flow? That's one. So you have an opportunity. Yung opportunity mo dito is yung assignments, assessments, our lessons. And then next is, o yan, nagawa ko na yung flow. Next is implementation. And now you offer an innovative solution or an innovative flow. How do I make my concept real? How do I make this written work real? Siyempre, distribute your assignment. So these are the three phases of the human-centered design. At ang unang-una dito is knowing your students. Knowing ano ba ang nangyayari sa kanila. Kaya ang importante talaga dito is empathy mapping. And dito tayo sa slide, meron tayo sa slide sa Pear Deck. And you're already probably seeing the content on Pear Deck. Yung empathy mapping is our awareness of these four quadrants. Ano yung sinasabi nila? Ano yung sa palagay niyong iniisip ng mga estudyante natin? Ano yung ginagawa or ginawa ng mga estudyante natin? At ano yung nararamdaman nila? Ano yung sinabi, said, thought, did, and felt? We become more empathetic, so to speak, if we are able to address these four. No? Pag aware tayo sa apat na ito, ano kaya sinasabi ng mga estudyante tungkol sa assignment na pinagawa ko sa kanila? What did the students actually say about the assessment that you just gave? Or you ask them, what did the students actually do? Ginawa ba nila yung assessment? Baka hindi nila ginawa kasi hindi sila inspired na gawin. Wala silang gana. They don't have the motivation to do your homework. Alamin nyo. At tayo naman, as teachers, and I have to admit, no, sometimes we take it against the students pagka ganito. A human-centered designer, teacher, would always think, bakit kaya? Ano yung mali? How can I change? How can I change my assessment and my assignment so that mas motivated yung mga estudyante na gawin ito? A human-centered educator would think that way. Hindi sila offended by these things that the students say, that the students do, at what the students think? What could the students be thinking about the assessment that you made? Isipin nyo yan. Kasi yan ang empathy. Yan ang kailangan natin ngayon, especially sa online distance learning. Yun ang thankful ako in a way, no, sa pandemic. Kasi medyo nahahasa yung yung empathy natin for others because of this pandemic. Kasi it really challenges us to understand the situation of our students. Kasi hindi natin sila nakikita. Dati, nakikita natin yung sitwasyon nila, di ba? Nakikita natin na pagod sila, malungkot sila, masaya sila, or whatever, di ba? At nakakausap agad natin sila. Ngayon, hindi. Ang hirap. It's always a guessing game. That's why this empathy mapping exercise will be very important. And of course, yung feelings ng mga bata. Importante rin yung feelings. Kasi tayong mga senior na, minsan we have a tendency na hindi, tatamad-tamad lang yan or whatever. We try to dismiss their feelings. Hindi pwede yon kasi in the process of motivation, it's not just intellectual eh. Hindi lang, ang mga bata lalo hindi sila nag-work just because alam nila they have to do it. Mahirap yon. The feelings play a part in the motivation, especially for children. For adults, yeah, alam natin yan. Kasi kailangan nating sumweldo. So, imagine if we always consider our feelings, baka tama rin na tayo, baka hindi tayo mag-work. 'Di ba? Ay, yung mga students, di naman sila sumasweldo. Wala naman silang perang makukuha dito. Well, except maybe for the diploma or the certificate, but some students are not motivated by that eh. Pero sa atin, kasi economic eh, pera ang nakasalalay pag hindi tayo nagtrabaho. So magagamit talaga natin yung utak natin. So this empathy mapping would be a great exercise for us, teachers, or whatever field we are in, to start understanding the situation of the others. Isipin nyo, bakit estudyante lang lagi ako, ang lagi ko dapat i-exercise ang empathy? Dapat ako din. Ang tao na dapat mag-empathize with us is our bosses. Yung mga boss natin, no? And if those who are, if meron dito sa grupo na to na principal, administrator, I think the students that you should be thinking of right now are your subordinates, your teachers. And your teachers need your empathy for the ones who are already administrators in this group. And for teachers, who should you empathize? Your students. Ayan. Ito na yung part na kind of human-centered and student-centered at the same time. Kasi we're more concerned with what the students are thinking, feeling, saying, and doing. That's empathy. Yan ang importante. So now that we know that we have to place the students at the center of our designing of our whole curriculum, we have to consider that in our teaching. When we design our assessments, when we're planning the amount of workload for our students. At saka makikinig tayo na pag sinabi ng mga estudyante na nahihirapan talaga sila. Hindi sila nag-iinarte lang. Sometimes ganun tayo mag-isip, no? Or meron tayong naririnig, perhaps na co-teacher na ganyan, nag-iinarte lang yung mga yan. We have to acknowledge, but it's real. Whatever they're feeling is real. We can never dismiss other people's feelings. If there's anything that is most truthful in this whole world, is our feelings. Hindi mo sabihin, peke naman yung nararamdaman mo. Walang gano'n, walang peking pakiramdam. Lahat ng pakiramdam, lahat ng feelings, lahat ng emotions ay totoo. Tandaan nyo yan. So that's why it's important that we acknowledge other people's feelings. Yon. Very passionate kasi ako dun eh. And yung human-centered design in education rooted in empathy and optimism for the people we are designing for. That excitement, that passion na kailangan mapagawa ko to sa mga students kasi excited ako. Considering the well-being of the students and knowing that everyone is capable of learning. I want you to spend a few seconds maybe or a minute. Try to think in the whole process of your designing your module or your synchronous classes this year or last year. Meron bang moment na na-excite kang magpagawa ng assessment sa mga students? Na-excite ka ba ever? If you want to share, you can always, unmute yourself and share something. Meron po bang gustong mag-share ng kanilang situation na yung ganyan na parang na-excite kang na ipagawa tong something, tong activity na to sa mga estudyante mo? Meron ba dito sa group? Share tayo? Kahit unmute lang. Para hindi
Hi,
lang ako
ma'am.
yung
Share
share.
ako.
Yes! Go, Miss Sheila! Yes, share po. Go ahead.
Kasi ano po medyo ah, talagang siguro medyo kasama ako sa asosasyon mo, ma'am. Passionate ako sa pagtuturo. So usually po talaga before I gave any activities, pinag-iisipan ko po 'yon. Tapos para bang ang tawag dito, I always put myself in their shoes. Tapos
Right.
ano yung makukuha nila. Tapos lagi ko sinasabi, even now na I am currently handling tawag dito, a class na synchronous and asynchronous. I usually ask them, kumusta na kayo? Nai-stress ba kayo sa subject ko? Right after I end my discussion, lagi ko sinasabi sa kanila, okay, I want you to type yes kung na-stress na kayo sa subject ko. No naman kung hindi pa. Tapos sabi ko sa kanila, it's okay na sabihan nyo sa akin na, ops, ma'am, medyo dumahaba na yung binibigay mo sa aming activities, especially during the asynchronous. So, kasi sabi ko po sa kanila, hindi ako magpapastress sa inyo. At the same thing, ayoko rin ma-stress kayo sa akin. Sabi ko gano'n, hindi naman pwede na ako lang ang hindi na-stress, tapos kayo mai-stress. So, yun po yung sinasabi ko sa kanila. So, sabi ko sa kanila, I just want you to be happy with all the activities that I am giving you. And then, I am open for comments and suggestions. So, halimbawa po, nagbigay ako ng activity kasi programming. Medyo parang matiyan po medyo mahirap siya. Sabi ko sa kanila, okay, saan tayo pupunta? Sabi ko gano'n. Halimbawa po, nagbigay ako ng 10 problems. Tapos, nilalagay ko po kasi usually, okay, I want you to choose 5 only kasi based on the time frame na binibigay ko. Just select 5, yung kaya nyo lang. Pero may mga degree naman po yung parang ganun lang ba? Na may choices sila kasi mahirap din po kasi magbigay ng activity na walang choices. Na talagang they are forced. Nung mga una, yes, I am guilty of that. Siguro because I really tawag dito, in-invite ko na sa sarili ko. It's part of my system na, okay, I will accept all the feedbacks that regardless positive or negative, kaya lagi ko po sinasabi, kaya napaka-open ko sa estudyante. So, yun po yun.
Thank you, Miss Sheila. Ayan. Thank you po for sharing, Miss Sheila. I think Miss Sheila is on the right track, no? Kung kailangan talaga na maging human-centered design tayo, ang pinaka-importante talaga is that, no? Yung empathy natin. And Miss Sheila is on the right track in showing this empathy for the students. Anyone else who would like to share their joy na magpagawa ng activity sa mga estudyante nila? Meron pa po ba? Ay, si Miss Ligaya. Yes po. Gusto ko yung name niya. Ligaya Joy. Yes.
Actually, if you'll get to know my maiden name, it's Dayang Hirang. So, mas Tagalog pa po.
Ligaya. Ay, wow. Oo nga. O, sige po, share po tayo.
I'd like to share this passion kasi po ako, I'm a SPED teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's so difficult for really, I'm disheartened now because if I haven't set the child before the lockdown, I mean those kids whom I haven't set before lockdown, meaning to say they were not able to establish the routine yet because they're new in the program. Sila po yung nahihirapan ako ngayon because it's difficult to do everything like a clown in front of the camera, win their attention because they're kids with special needs. So I think yung passion ko po even extend dun sa mga parents. I would understand how they also feel. They haven't realized actually getting this information directly from them na ang hirap po pala teacher ng ginawa ninyo, you know. They haven't experienced that before kasi dalhin lang naman nila, the-drop off lang nila yung kids sa school and then we attend to the kids' needs. So ngayon, I'm disheartened because I really don't know how to handle some kids who haven't had their routines yet. So there's one since the lockdown, March po. Ngayon lang siya nagsalita through online. Had I had it face-to-face, maybe in a month, magsasalita na siya. I mean, these are kids with autism. So, ang hirap po. So ngayon, I got, I don't know because I've always told my co-teachers that we need to be student-centered. Let's get away from the traditional teachers, student-centered. But now, you're telling us po, Doc, na human-centered design. So I really got interested to this. I'll be listening until the end. Thank you po, ma'am.
Thank you, Ma'am Ligaya. And just a correction, I'm not yet a doctor. Pero tunog doktor, pwede na rin. Thank you. And yes, I think gusto ko yung shinare ni Ma'am Ligaya kasi it's a perfect opportunity to really start developing this human-centered design. Kasi meron siyang challenge eh. Yung challenge of teaching special children with disabilities, no? And with special needs. Ito yung challenge niya. So, nandun na siya sa inspiration phase ng human-centered design. And she's already in the ideation, somewhat implementation stage na rin. Kasi she's trying to experiment. I'll make myself look like a clown during asynchronous sessions. Ganun talaga. Yun ang maganda sa pag-experiment and in trying to go deep into the human-centered design. Kasi the human-centered design forces us to go outside of our box. Diba? We're already trying other things that did not work that used to work in traditional setting but don't work in online distance learning. So, dapat I'm proud of Miss Ligaya, no? So, clap tayo for Ma'am Ligaya for her effort. And yun talaga. And I think all of us here in this group, no, we're all challenged by the online distance learning setup. And technically, all of us are already in that inspiration stage, no? So, kailangan talaga nandito, dapat mag-move on na tayo, doon na tayo dapat sa ideation, nandun na tayo dapat sa going outside of our box and then trying to experiment with a lot of things, trying to be human-centered, from student-centered to human-centered. And again, ang importante dyan is empathy. Yan. So yung empathy math natin, i-practice natin yan. Ano yung sinabi nila, naramdaman nila, ano kaya yung iniisip nila, at ano yung ginagawa nila. Because it speaks, these four aspects speak a lot about their situation. And we need to be aware of those things. Okay, let's move on. Ayan, itong slide naman na to. Ano ba to? Ano naman ang sign ng lack of empathy? So, ang lack of empathy is rooted in this concept of implicit bias. Pag sinabi nating implicit bias, these are the biases that are in our subconscious. Hindi tayo aware. So, there's nothing wrong with implicit biases. So, don't feel bad also na meron tayong implicit bias, that we discover our implicit biases. Kasi nasa likod natin yung mga bias na yan eh. And here's a quote about implicit bias. Recognizing biases is crucial for the true understanding of our students. It will help break down stereotypes and barriers. Importante to kasi alam niyo ba, nung bagong teacher lang din ako sa Lasal, nagtuturo ako sa De La Salle University Integrated School. Meron kaming student feedback eh. So, nagta-type sila, yung anonymous naman. Pero laging lumalabas dun sa student feedback ko is, Miss Trish shows favoritism. Yan. So, meron tayong mga lumalabas yung bias natin for sa mga students na matatalino, yung laging sumasagot ng mga tanong natin. Kasi syempre yun yung gusto natin, di ba? Nasagot mo yung tanong ko, I like you. Lalo na pag ino-observe tayo ng supervisor natin, di ba? Tapos walang sumasagot, ayaw natin nun. Sometimes we feel that yung mga estudyante na nakakasagot ng tanong natin, they save us. They give us the high score in our evaluation mark. So meron tayong ganung bias na nung una. Pero this kind of stereotypes, no, the students na nagfo-focus lang yung effort tuloy natin sa mga estudyante na marunong na. Kamusta naman yung mga nasa laylayan ng lipunan, di ba? Yung mga nasa labas nitong grupo na to. Itong grupo na marurunong, kaunti lang. Paano na yung mga nasa labas ng grupo na yon, di ba? So we have to be aware of these implicit biases. Sabi nga ni Dasgupta, unconscious biases are not permanent. In fact, they are malleable and steps can be taken to limit their impact on our thoughts and behaviors. Kahit subconscious siya, kahit hindi tayo aware na nandun yung implicit bias natin, it affects how we behave. It affects also how we think. So if it affects our behavior and how we think, it will affect how we design our assessments. Kaya minsan magrereklamo yung mga estudyante natin, ang hirap naman ng assessment, miss, ang hirap. Kasi meron tayong mga implicit biases na affecting our decision. So we need to try to be aware of their implicit biases para ma-break down natin sila. Ano ba itong mga possible na implicit bias natin sa ating mga Pilipino, no, mga Filipino educators? Ito, ability bias. Using ourselves as the measure for our students' ability to do things. Kaya ko nga gawin yan eh. Kayang-kaya yan ng mga estudyante. Ako kaya kong gawin in 10 minutes. Kahit sila 20 minutes. Pero wag ka. Days ang nakalipas bago nila matapos yung activity. Isa yon. Yung mga kahit na implicit bias. I'm sure na-verbalize natin, pero this also appears as an implicit bias. Using ourselves also to measure our parents' ability. Kaedad ko kaya yung parents niyan? Pareho kaya yung pinakikinggan namin ng mga love songs. Pareho kaming nakikinig sa 96.3. Ka-age ko yan. No? Dapat marunong din yan mag-technology. Ba't di siya marunong mag-technology? So yan, ginagamit natin yung sarili natin as the yardstick or meter stick. No, meter na lang kasi meter tayo sa Pilipinas eh. Meter stick for what our parents can do and what our students can do. Again, masyadong teacher-centered yung mga biases na yon. We have to start empathizing more with our students so we become more human-centered. Isa pa, class status bias. Ano ba tong class status bias na to? Yung nagtuturo ako sa De La Salle University Integrated School, di ba? Mayayaman dapat yung mga estudyante namin. Pero tapos i-expect ko na dapat lahat may computer, lahat mabilis ang internet, pero hindi ganun. We had a dialogue with the Parents Association ngayong online distance learning, and they made us aware, the administrators, they made us aware that some parents or some families do not have accessible Wi-Fi. Nakatira rin sila sa mga lugar na wala pang fiber. DSL pa lang, yung DSL hindi reliable, napuputol, mabagal pa. Si PLDT, kailangan Liza Soberano bago kapuntahan ni PLDT, diba? 300 Mbps. Pero hindi tayo lahat sa Liza Soberano na agad-agad nandyan ang PLDT. Yan. Yung class status also as a gauge for parents' ability to afford technology. Ayan, wag natin laging gagawin yan. Ayan yung mga iniisip natin, yung mga assumptions na to. Itong mga implicit biases na to also lead to wrong assumptions. So hindi natin kailangan talaga alisin yung mga yan. Implicit bias, away. Assumptions, away. We have to start talking to the students themselves, talking to the parents also, no? Si Ma'am Ligaya also need to talk to, especially for children with special needs, need to always coordinate with the parents, no? Yeah, very important. So how do we battle these implicit biases or our subconscious assumptions? We have to start developing self-awareness. We have to be aware of these biases. Hoy, oh my God, medyo nabias ako nung moment na yon. Ganon. Wait lang, nababias yata ako. Ganyan. Dapat yun yung ating mga realizations ngayon. Ginagamit ko yun sa sarili ko, yung as a meter stick for the student. Eh, hindi na talaga kaya. Understand the nature of bias, that biases are normal. Yun din naman ang isipin ninyo. So do not be offended na parang, ay bias ako. Ako din naman, may mga biases pa rin. And we just really have to be aware of these things. Natural yan that we develop biases. It's very natural. But what's important is that we become aware of them and that we start destroying these biases one at a time. No one changes overnight, ha? Always remember that. Then, learn about the different types of biases. May mga biases against religion. Oh, yung mga Katoliko mas masisipag or something like that, no? Meron tayong mga biases against religion. Biases also against gender. Meron tayong gender biases. So we also have to be careful with ourselves. Ako, hindi ko talaga tinitingnan kung babae lalaki itong estudyante na to. Ang lagi ko lang tinitingnan, ang lagi ko lang perspective, tao to. Ang kausap ko, tao. Yun. So, medyo natitrain ko na yung sarili ko. And did that happen overnight? No. It did not happen overnight. Talagang it's a habit. It's a habit. And kailangan talaga repeated act siya. Sabi nga ni Aristotle, repeated acts will develop virtue. Yan. Ano pa ba tayo? Okay. And dialogue with the dissimilar group. Yung gusto mo yung kliyente mo, talk to them. Kamusta po sa bahay? Ano po nangyayari? That's why we engaged in a dialogue with the parents so we know what's happening at home. Yan. Sa totoo lang, itong mga implicit bias na to, na-discover ko lang to ngayong pandemic. Nung nasa classroom, hindi ako masyadong conscious dito. Ayan. So, can we go to our pair deck? Dun sa ating link, meron tayong 9 students and 6 active students now in pair deck. And let's go to this slide, discussion of human-centered design. I think it's slide number 17. There's an option there for you to type. Yes, there's an option there for you to type your response. Yan, type lang tayo kahit bullets lang, kahit big words lang. Para doon sa mga kapapasok lang, yung ating slide deck ay nandito sa baba. Nakikita nyo, it says here, access slide deck here, join.pd. Tapos tatanungin kayo kung ano yung code, EYATPK. Doon lang muna tayo sa slide 17. Baka may naliligaw agad sa 18 eh. I'll give you 20 seconds to wrap up your response. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. This is student-paced, so you can continue typing your responses. But I'm reading some of the responses here. I hope you don't mind, no? Basahin ko lang yung mga sagot ng ibang tao dito. The evidence would be getting regular feedback from students about how they are faring in their lessons and tasks. Very good, kasi it's a sign of empathy. And then another evidence would be you care for people regardless of who the person is. Very good, no? So, we care for each one regardless. Mayaman, mahirap, favorite o hindi favorite. Natural, no? Nagkakaroon talaga tayo ng mga favorite students. Pero, wag na lang natin itaramdam. Kasi natural eh. Lalo na pag nagagalingan tayo dun sa estudyante, di ba? Ayan, human-centered. Again, yung mga sagot ninyo, I think that's common and I think proud na ako sa mga sagot ninyo kasi talagang ang common sa mga responses dito is the word empathy and the evidences for this empathy. Kasi that is the root of human-centered design, empathy and optimism. Share ko lang, no? Hindi nakalimutan ko i-share kanina na, di ba yung tanong ko, na-excite na ba kayo? Natuwa na ba kayo na magpagawa ng activity sa mga estudyante ninyo? Sino ba yung natutuwa, di ba? Ako, actually, very recently, nag-iisip kami ng activity, paano bang pwede nating i-essay writing? Essay writing? No? Paano ako matutuwang magpa-essay writing sa mga students? Yung competency, English teacher din kasi ako ng grade 10. Isang competency doon sa most essential learning competencies ng DepEd is the ability for students to evaluate something viewed, pinanood, evaluate. Hoy, sabi namin mga co-teachers ko, magandang magpa-film critic. At anong film naman daw ang kikritik nila? At yung topic namin is how media teaches values. Tapos nung sinabi ko yun sa mga estudyante ko, nung kailan ba to? Kahapon lang actually, kahapon lang namin in-announce na you will be writing a film critic analyzing the values that your film or TV series tries to show to the audience. Aba, tuwang-tuwa na yung mga students. Sa chat, nagtatanong, Miss, pwede po ba anime? Yes, sige, go do anime. Miss, pwede po ba K-drama? Yes, go K-drama. So, meron silang ganong excitement to do it. Na at least, wow, I'm able to give them that choice to watch. Hindi kami namili. Normally, mamimili ka, di ba? Watch Schindler's List and analyze. So wala, isang movie lang, di ba? Eh ngayon, they can analyze anything that they like. So at the same time, that kind of design, that kind of human-centeredness, you give them that choice to choose what movie to analyze. And kahit na ibang lengguwahe pa yan, Korean, Japanese, at whatnot, Tagalog. Actually, I told them, you can also do Tagalog movies if you like. And then write about it. So at the same time, they're doing a requirement and they're doing something that they like. Imagine, nanonood sila, nagne-Netflix sila, nagmamarathon sila ng K-drama. Sasabihin ng nanay sa kanila, anak, mag-aral ka muna, tigil mo muna yung Netflix. Ma, I'm doing work here. I'm studying. Di ba ang saya nun? Trying to think outside the box and trying to design an assessment that something that they like, and at the same time, you are trying to achieve a learning competency. Diba? So, ganun tayo, that kind of passion. All right, so good job. Thank you for the ones who are writing still. And let's go to the next slide. Slide 18. You can continue slide 17 at another time. Slide 18 is the DepEd's response to the COVID-19 pandemic human-centered? Yan. Medyo opinionated siguro ito. Pero let's test how well we understand the human-centered design in this approach. Don't worry, hindi ko kayo isusumbong sa DepEd. Ay, may mga taga-DepEd pala dito. Okay lang maging bias. Let's see. Kunyari, kayo yung DepEd secretary. Or maybe you could give a suggestion. How can we improve, make the program more human-centered? Okay. Tigil ko na ha. Okay, mag-start na ulit ako mag-discuss. I think some of you already gave very substantial responses to this question. I have varied responses here, but I think in general, what your response shows is that DepEd still needs to work on making it more human-centered. Because, for example, one person here said that it has overlooked a lot of situations of the families and the students right now. No, I think that's a valid opinion that I think DepEd will still have to consider in terms of the program. But as DepEd teachers yourselves, you can already take this challenge on your own. Na alam nyo na yung default ni DepEd already lacks this human-centeredness, this seeming lack of empathy. Kayo as a teacher, as individual teachers, you can already add that empathy, that missing human-centeredness in the DepEd program into your own synchronous sessions. I know that kasi yung mga modules, 'di ba, para dun sa mga module-based, mga modular, medyo mahirap. Paano yan magiging human-centered, 'di ba? Ayan. So, good job. Maganda yung mga opinions ni dito. And let's move on. So at least I think this exercise objective really is to help you become more conscious of human-centeredness. Ito na nga, sige nga, let's see. Yes or no? This is a drawing activity. Go to slide number 19, drawing activity. So you click on, do you see the pen tool at the bottom? Or a highlighter tool, you can click check or whatever you want to do, dot or whatever, just put it under yes or no. Human-centered ba tong first statement? Yes or no? Human-centered ba tong second or human-centered ba tong third? Yeah, very good. May mga nagdo-drawing na ng dot. You can draw a check mark under yes. You can draw a star. Do anything. Change the color. Ang cute. Iba-iba yung colors. Nag-enjoy ba kayo sa Pear Deck? I love Pear Deck. May free trial lahat ng mga teachers. DepEd.gov, I think also. I think mga .edu. Meron kayong 3 months premium access to Pear Deck. Trial. Try nyo. Ayan, meron tayong mga sagot dito. Yung first statement, reprimanding students for being late for the synchronous sessions. Yes, this is a no. No talaga to, not human-centered. I hear of stories that teachers reprimand. Bakit ngayon ka lang? Bakit ka late? Ang hina naman ng connection mo. Very not empathetic, no? And then yung second statement, assessing students' speaking ability by submitting a video. I would like to say that this is not human-centered kasi there are other ways that the students can still submit or can still show the competency of speaking other than submitting a video. And aside from that, pag video, di ba ang laki ng file na yan, mahirap yan i-upload. Tapos kahit sa iyo as a teacher, lalo na kung data ka lang, di ba? Magastos tong pag-download ng video sa data. So medyo hindi siya human-centered. Yung third, assessing students' ability to explain a concept by letting them choose how to present their understanding. Yes, good job. Check na check. So this is very human-centered. The idea of human-centered design is voice and choice. Yung shinare kanina ni Ms. Sheila, voice and choice yon. Yung you give the student the voice and the choice how they will present their learning competency. Yun ang importante naman ngayon sa online distance learning. Focus tayo sa learning competency. And kung ang bata naman na-achieve naman yung learning competency regardless of how it was done, then dun tayo. Ako naman mahirap na yung essay writing. Yun talaga ang ina-assess namin, yung writing skills. Hindi kami pwede magpa-video. So kailangan talaga may essay writing kami. But asan yung choice ng mga bata doon? Yung sa material. Na at least makapili sila ng something that they like, di ba? Hindi ko sila pinilit manood ng Schindler's List o ng Oro Plata Mata. Hindi mahirap yon kasi medyo adult yung content nun. Okay, so let's leave human-centered design. Let's move on to universal design for learning. Because we started a bit late, I hope you don't mind if we just extend just a little bit. But I'll try to hurry, but at the same time, still discuss this in depth. What is universal design for learning? Ito yung paradigm shift. The universal design for learning forces us into a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift from what? From fixing kids to fixing the curriculum or the school. Hindi na tayo yung parang, ay hindi niya alam, kailangan alam niya. Sira yung bata, ayusin natin. Hindi na. Yung curriculum na ang mag-a-adjust. Sino mag-a-adjust? Estudyante o curriculum? Curriculum. That's universal design for learning. From writing a story to creating a narrative. Pag sinabi mo, write a story, paano kung create story lang talaga, sulat lang talaga. But if you change the competency to creating a narrative, na-imagine nyo, ang daming pwedeng outputs, maraming choice, pwedeng video, pwedeng comic strip, pwedeng written story, pwede ring audio narration. Diba? Ang daming pwede. Yan ang universal for design for learning. From knowledge acquisition to learner expertise. Hindi na tayo yung, alam nyo to, memorize. Hindi na yon. It's making the student an expert in writing a story, an expert in coding. Or from individualized routes to a single destination. No? Na, gumagamit ba kayo ng Waze at saka Google Maps? Di ba si Waze, mag-o-offer siya ng iba-ibang ruta? Merong via tollway, via dirt road, via highway, at kung ano-ano pa, via mga singit-singit. Kaya minsan naliligaw tayo pag gamit natin Waze. Pero ang destinasyon, iisa. Yan si universal design for learning. Different routes towards the same destination. At ang destination, yung learning competency. According to Duncan, 2011, education should be tight on goals and loose on means. Focus lang tayo sa goal. Kung paano maka-achieve ng goal, as long as hindi naman siya masama, payagan natin. Yun si universal design for learning. Basically, rooted in these three principles or three means. That in the universal design for learning, you provide multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression. Saan ba napulot tong tatlong to? Engagement, representation, action, and expression. Saan ba nila hinugot yan? Invento lang naman yan. Hindi siya invento. It has basis in neuroscience. Yung engagement tries to attract or appeal to the affective network. Representation appeals to the recognition network of our brains. And action and expression appeals to the strategic network of our brains. Imagine, alam niyo yung meme na, sana pala in-add ko dito yung meme na yung brain na walang color, tas biglang maliwanag, tas biglang zoom, ganon. So ito yung stage na yon na pag na-offer nyo tong tatlong to, engagement, representation, action, and expression, yung brain mind blown. Yun ang gusto nating ma-achieve sa mga bata. That we are able to trigger, spark the affective network, recognition network, and the strategic network. So here, on a more visual presentation, no, universal design for learning, yung affective network deals with the why of learning. Ito yung motivation. Diyan pumapasok si motivation. Kaya importante that before we start the lesson, may motivation tayo. We motivate the students. Kasi pag walang motivation, hindi sila makikinig sa'yo. You have to stimulate the interest and motivation and learning for learning of your students. Kailangan dito papasok si challenge and support. Pag nag-challenge kayo, you will start motivating your students. Always start with a challenge. Another one, recognition network, the what of learning. So ngayon, na-motivate mo na. So ano ngayon, dun na kayo sa content ng learning. So how we gather facts and categorize what we see, what we hear, what we read, and then presenting the information, presenting our content in different ways. Hindi lang puro salita ka lang ng salita. Meron kang visual aid, meron kang video aid, meron kang audio aid, meron ka ring physical movement. Yun yung last, yung sa recognition. Then strategic network, planning and performing the tasks. Kaya importante yung mga performance tasks. Ito yung basis niyan. The performance tasks should be able to enable the students to strategize. Ngayon, i-combine natin si human-centered design sa universal design for learning. Yung sa mga performance tasks ba ninyo, na-challenge ba sila to strategize? Are they kailangan ba nila mag-strategize to be able to create their output for the performance task? Pag walang strategy, baka hindi natin ma-engage yung mga students. See how important and how interconnected these three networks are. Very important. Ayan. So with regard to the why of learning, engagement with the learning task depends on the provision of a sufficiently flexible curriculum, right balance of challenge and support. Kailangan may challenge. Pag walang challenge, kaya doon sa mga nagsagot kanina na kailangan ba yung mga assessment difficult? Sometimes it has to be difficult. Not the assessment, but how we present our information. How we begin our lesson. Tayo ba pag nag-start ng lesson, diretso agad salita? Or meron tayong konting challenge? Kahit trivia lang. Trivia, okay na yun. Challenge lang natin sila. And then for representation that we offer, we present the same concept in different ways. Like yung example ko lang kanina, yung different networks. I presented it to you in two ways. One way, in a table form, yung different modes of provide multiple modes for engagement, representation, and action and expression, table form. And then another way is in columns na may image naman tayo ng mga brain networks. So yan, I presented it to you in different ways. So that's universal design for learning. Next is action and expression, the how of learning. Providing multiple, ito yung choice. Dito pumapasok si choice. Providing multiple means of action and expression. Options for executive function. Ano ba itong ibig sabihin nitong executive function? Pag sinabing executive function, yung ginagamit natin as teachers, no? Yung goal setting, planning, progress monitoring. Gumagawa ba sila ng Gantt chart? Alam niyo ba yung Gantt chart? Yung timetable. Nagta-timetable ba sila pag gumagawa ng performance task? Yan. Because this deals with career life skills. Itong action and expression. And if we can give them opportunity for physical movement, better. PE, dapat may physical movement yun, no? Let's try to analyze this simple lesson plan. Actually, ako gumawa nitong lesson plan ito. Criticize natin, no? Kung gaano siya kapangit. Oh, maybe maganda. With regard to engagement, representation, and action and expression. go to Pear Deck. Meron tayong opportunity there to write our responses. Let's go to slide number 29. Go to slide number 29 and let's see. Does this activity have opportunities for engagement? Is it challenging enough? Did it propose a challenge or a support for the student? Tingnan nga. Tingnan natin. Drawing ito, if you can highlight or underline the part of the activity here na may engagement, may why of learning. Sige nga. Ba't walang nag-underline? Ba't walang nag-highlight? Meron ba? Baka naman kasi wala.
Ma'am, reading.
Reading. Very good. Excited ako masyado. Demanding si Miss Trish. Yeah, rhetoric is public speaking. Kung walang engagement, drawingan nyo ng isang malaking X. Pag may engagement, try nyong i-underline yung part na sa tingin nyo or bilugan yung part na sa tingin nyo is engaging the student. Meron po ba nagtatry? Nasa think, pair, share activity ba niya? Sa 1, sa 2, sa 3, sa 4, sa 5? Is it motivating? Ayan, meron na tayong nakitang may nagsagot, may nag-highlight. O sige, let's move on na ha kasi 6:01 na eh. So ito, yung ating activity, matis may mga nag-try mag-highlight. For example, may isa nag-highlight nung ano yun? Pair will watch a speech, motivational, very good. And then using the iPads. Yes, especially for the ones na hindi naman gumagamit ng iPad. Very motivating to that you give them that opportunity to use a new device na hindi naman nila nagagamit before. So it's a challenge for them, 'di ba? Na parang matuto sila na paano ba 'to gumamit ng isang iPad? Paano ba manood ng YouTube dito sa iPad? So good job. So very motivating siya. It's kind of challenging as well. Pero syempre sa isang school na lagi naman gumagamit ng iPad, for example, sa Lasal, nag-iPad na yung mga estudyante namin, hindi siya challenging masyado. Kasi dumiretso agad ako sa, okay, manood kayo. Manood agad. Walang challenge, no? So medyo weak yung engagement nito. Meron, pero weak yung kanyang engagement. Let's go to the next slide. Slide 30. What about the representation? Marami bang opportunities yung activity? It's still the same, no? Yung activities natin di naman nabago. Pero meron bang opportunities for different ways of presenting the definition of rhetoric to the students of public speaking? Bilangin nyo nga. Lagyan nyo ng 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kung ilan yung representation ng rhetoric dito sa activity na to. Pwedeng drawing. Ilan kaya ang representation dito? Ilang ways ang ginamit ni teacher para i-present yung ibig sabihin ng rhetoric sa mga bata. May nagtatry po bang magsagot? Parang wala. Pero okay lang. Ayan, may nagsasagot. Thank you. Ilan? Ilan ang nakikita natin dito na representation? Base dito sa akin nakikita, mukhang isa lang. At ito lang ay in the example do sa video lang ni Lisa makuha. So ito hindi siya magandang multiple mode of representation kasi isa lang yung way ng presentation niya, yung video lang. And let's go to the last. Ayan. The last idea on action and expression. Are there many ways for the students to present their learning competency? Are there multiple ways for the students to show their output? To show their learning? May nakapag-identify ng isa, dalawa. Very good. Actually, pwede na rin to sa action and expression. Dalawa ang output na pwedeng gawin ng bata. One is yung babalik sila dun sa Padlet, dun sa KWL chart, tapos tatapusin nila yung KWL chart nila. And then, second output would be send the keynote presentation to their teacher. Yung keynote, yung kanilang slide presentation, i-email nila about the summary of the elements of good rhetoric. So at least may dalawang output. Pero both are required. Yun ang problema. Both are required. Sana dalawa, pero the students have a choice which one to do. Yan, dun tayo. So that's the universal design for learning. So I'll skip na this part of listening. You could already what do you call this? Do this on your own. I'll skip right into the, paano ba ako pumunta dyan? Medyo magpa-fast forward tayo kasi wala akong navigation nito. Ito mga ano lang naman to, mga reminders. It's not really part of my discussion today. But definitely, these slides are evidences also of human-centered design and universal design for learning. Sayang tong cognitive load. Siguro another session. Ito lang. Makita nyo lang tong mga to na yung number of subjects, 9. Tapos imagine ko ilan yung written works nila. 3, 2. Di na number of output sa isang student is 45. Lesson apps and online tools, focus lang on what's needed. Lessen the cognitive load. And keep workload at a minimum. You have to transform. Sorry, fast forward tayo. Ito, kino-compare ko lang dito yung school-based learning sa distance learning. Ano bang pagkakaiba? Para to develop also more of our empathy. Kasi kailangan makita natin yung diferensya ng dalawa. Tapos ito, yung benefits, yung advantages at saka disadvantages ng asynchronous with synchronous. Ano ba yung combo ng school natin? 50-50 ba o mas maraming synchronous kaysa asynchronous or more asynchronous than synchronous? Ayan, characteristics lang of effective remote distance online teaching. Than teacher, are you flexible, organized, patient, troubleshooter, di ba? Ma'am, di ako makakonect. O yan, kailangan marunong tayo mag-troubleshoot. Are we a planner? Empathy and compassion, can multitask, can innovate and create, resilient, open-minded, confident, builds relationship, etc. Sorry, nag-fast forward tayo. Ayan. Workshop output required to be submitted to earn your certificate. Simple lang naman. Actually, pwede nyo i-copy-paste to. Tapos, edit-edit lang tayo ng mga ibang parts. Pero I want that your lesson, na lesson nyo ang gawan nyo. Ha? Hindi public speaking. At least i-update nyo lang to. Yung iba dito, pwede nyo i-copy-paste. Ako na nagsasabi. Kasi tama lang naman yung wording. Pero siguro ang maiiba talaga sa atin dito is yung column on Human-Centered Design and UDL concept. Yung student guide yan, pwede na copy-paste yan. At saka yung share screen, i-retype nyo lang, ilagay nyo lang yung topic nyo. Video conferencing tool, ito pwede nyo i-copy-paste din to. Teacher guide, ito hindi nyo pwede i-copy-paste to kasi kailangan yung, ito yung medyo kailangan nyo lang huwag nyo lang masyadong i-stress yung sarili nyo with this. Just parang madali ang pag-iisip lang. So yun lang ang kailangan yung i-fill up. And eto na. When you go to the Kaisipan link, dito tayo sa, I'll put it in the chat to everyone. This is the link, bit.ly, isip cert ba yun? Tama ba? Patay tayo dyan. Ayan, isip reg cert. Ayun pala. Isip reg cert. Ayan. Kasi si Ma'am Tony nag-ask na ng name after the session. Pero ito na yon. If you go to this link, okay, yung bit.ly, yes, nandyan na siya. Ito siya. Pakita ko how it looks like. When you'll be asked to upload your required output for the session. So, screenshot nyo na lang yung na-fill upan nyo na lesson plan template. And then, when you click the word add file dito sa Google Form, maglalabas tong pop-up. And then, it will ask you, select file from your device. Click nyo lang yan, select file from your device. And then, click upload. Ganun lang siya kadali. So, either PDF or picture. You can register here to get your certificates. And para dun sa mga, yung mga nasa pair deck, pwede nyo i-click yan. Click nyo nga. Nakiklik yan. Tapos mag-open na yan agad sa, if you're on slide 54. Pag tinlik nyo yung slide na yan, lalabas na yung Google form. Try nyo. Ayan that's what I like also about pair deck. It's so interactive. Click niyo yan. Di ba? Kita niya. At andyan na rin, kita niyo na? Nandyan na rin lahat ng links to my handouts, to the pair deck link para maalala nyo na ito yung link. At saka, meron akong bonus dyan, journal. Check niyo yung journal. Baka magawa niyo rin yan sa mga estudyante niyo. Maganda tong journal activity. It enhances our reflective thinking, our metacognition. Yan ang importante kasi sa cognitive load. Hindi ko na lang na-discuss si cognitive load. All right. And if you have any comments, suggestions, feedback, please feel free to, siguro edit ko na lang yung Google form. Maglalagay ako ng tanong doon about your feedback regarding this seminar. Okay po? Kailangan empathy tayo eh. Kailangan maging open-minded tayo sa feedback. May mga tanong po ba tayo? Pwede tayo, if you want to stay and discuss at magkwentuhan lang, pwede tayong magstay dito. But for those who already need to go, you may already go. So at this point, I would like to thank everyone who were able to attend this session. I hope you learned a thing or two or three or four or five. And hopefully these things that we learned, I hope that these things that we learned from today's session you would be able to bring into your career as a teacher, or your vocation as a teacher. And do not forget, we have to be inspired and empathetic. If there's any two things that you will have to remember from this session, that would be empathy and inspiration, and the universal design for learning. All right. So thank you, everyone. For those who need to go,